So, let's look at Genesis 8:2 after consideration of all these local historical floods. They were huge, and they were only local. Genesis 8:2, and the fountains of the deep, the subterranean caverns of huge amounts of waters, plus the shallow seas, plus the water overhead, frozen above, miles in the sky, frozen, super frozen, protecting the Earth's canopy, water canopy, the Earth's surface rather, from damage of ultraviolet radiation, and keeping gentle temperatures and tremendous amounts of oxygen, making animals and plants and humans grow larger, more healthy, longer lived. Anyway, all these combined, tremendous flood erosion from the flood's rainfall. So we have the worldwide flood contributed by subterranean cavern upheaval through tremendous, multifaceted earthquakes all around the globe and volcanoes. Great quantities of water were poured down on the earth from the skies, not in the form of a gentle drizzle, but as a torrential downpour, continuing without ceasing for 40 days and nights all over the world. Speaking metaphorically, the scriptures say that the floodgates of heaven were open. This pounding rain would first, by its own impact, begin the work of soil and rock erosion, but on a worldwide scale. Modern hydrology has proved that raindrop impact is a very significant factor in the initiation of the erosion phenomenon. As the waters begin to run off to lower levels, already containing a certain amount of sedimentary load to aid in further erosive action by the mechanisms of turbulence and attrition, it would begin to form rivulets. These would run finally to the nearest stream, but in the process would deepen their own channels by further erosion. But instantly, this is the way in which great gullies are formed, often to great depths in a single rainstorm in the present day, as observed. For in the uniquely intense rainstorms of the Deluge worldwide, the combined processes of raindrop impact, sheet erosion, and gully erosion would necessarily have excavated and transported prodigious quantities of earth and rock, even if no other agencies had been available for sediment transfer. And what are those agencies? Point 3, massive, worldwide, volcanic, seismic, and tidal wave activity. Just the major ones. Introduction. Great volcanic explosions and eruptions are clearly implied in the statement that all the foundations of the great deep were broken up. Genesis 7:11. This must mean that great quantities of liquids, perhaps liquid rocks or magmas from the volcanoes, as well as water, probably steam, had been confined under great pressure below the surface rock structure of the earth since the time of its formation, and that this mass now burst forth through great fountains, probably both on the lands and under the seas, miles and miles high. By analogy with present phenomena associated with volcanism, there must have also been great earthquakes and tsunamis, popularly known as tidal waves, generated throughout the world, all at once. All those people there on the center landmass. These eruptions and waves would have augmented the floodwaters as well as accomplished great amounts of geologic work directly, terrorizing the people. They were excessively evil. Further inferences from the biblical record of the Deluge are that there were great amounts of volcanism and great earth movements, both in the early and later stages of the flood period. That these inferences are supported by the field evidence, at least in a general way, is unquestionable. A great part of the Earth's land surface is covered with material originally ejected from volcanic cones or vents. Rocks formed by volcanic action are called igneous. Plenty of those around the world, from a Latin term for fire. Without them, no continent would have assumed anything like its present features. During past geological ages, lava flowed much more freely than now, and it not only sprouted from craters, but also pushed upward from immense cracks in the planet's crust. Hang on while I take a drink. Earth's most stupendous rock formation, stretching for more than 1,000 miles along the shores of Canada and Alaska, was squeezed out in such fashion. Oozing lava built great plateaus which now cover 200,000 square miles in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Northern California. An even larger eruption created India's famous Deccan Plateau, whose once molten rock extends as much as 2 miles below the surface. Argentina, South Africa, and Brazil have similar plateaus. We had one landmass, and now we're getting more. 40 days and 40 nights. Gary Webster. Volcanoes, nature's blast furnaces. It is significant, too, that volcanic rocks are found interbedded with sedimentary rocks of all supposed geologic ages. Maybe it happened all at once, which would correlate with the biblical implications that the fountains of the great deep continue to pour out their contents throughout the entire flood period. Not for ages and ages, 40 days and 40 nights. Scripture indicates that the great volcanic earthquake activity began with the great 40-day downpour, and that it did not cease until the rain ceased. Hear it again, Genesis 8:2. Also, the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained. Wow, did that happen all of a sudden? You had to have a fast-track camera, 40 days and 40 nights, all over the world. Not enough film to cover all of that. Evidences of past volcanism testify to a worldwide flood. Not the local stuff all separated by ages and ages. Let's see. Further inferences from the biblical record of the deluge are that there were great amounts of volcanism and great earth movements, both in the early and later stages of the flood period. That these, 40 days, 40 nights, these inferences are supported by the field evidence that we can look at least in a general way. That's unquestionable that we can do that. A great part of the Earth's land surface is covered with material originally ejected from volcanic cones or vents. Just grab a geologist and let him walk around with you and come and tell me what you observe without interpreting it. Rocks formed by volcanic action are called igneous, from a Latin term for fire. Without them, no continent would have assumed anything like its present features. During past geological ages, lava flowed much more freely than now. It not only sprouted from the craters, but also pushed upward from the immense cracks in the planet's crust. Earth's most stupendous rock formation, stretching for more than 1,000 miles along the shores of Canada and Alaska, was squeezed out in such fashion. Oozing lava built great plateaus which now cover 200,000 square miles in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Northern California. An even larger eruption created India's famous Deccan Plateau, whose once molten rock extends as much as 2 miles below the surface. Argentina, South Africa, and Brazil have similar plateaus. Gary Webster. It is significant, too, that volcanic rocks are found interbedded with sedimentary rocks of all supposed geologic ages, which would correlate with the biblical implications that the fountains of the great deep continue to pour out their contents throughout the entire flood period. Okay. Again, we keep looking. I will keep wanting to remind you what these words of Genesis and what they can be interpolated are the possibilities, let's say, of the earth as we presently can observe it right now. Also, the fountains of deepen, the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained. It is not only the land, of course, that evidences of volcanic action are found. The present status of knowledge of the sea floor in the Pacific Ocean area is such that a surprising amount of evidence of large-scale faulting, mountain buildings, volcanic activity, and large-scale crustal movements under the sea is known. This is a marked departure from earlier assumptions, which, because of lack of information, held that this vast area had been relatively calm during the so-called geologic time. Saying, oh yeah, we just look at the oceans. Just the land, because nobody could go down below the sea at that time. Now we have the technology, and we can report this. How many evolutionists report this? Violence under the seas, not over the ages, 40-day period, 40 days, 40 nights. Edwin L. Hamilton. It is well known, of course, that most of the oceanic islands, both above and below, present ocean level, were primarily of volcanic origin. Next major point, the evidences of past volcanism cannot be explained by uniformitarianism. Can't just gradually do things as we see them today. You know, we think, oh, thousands and thousands and thousands of periods of time, millions and maybe billions of years. Same thing over and over, just gradualism. That's why we have plenty of time for humans to evolve. Well, the problem with that is there's so much evidence, even now, as we know, under the sea, of sudden cataclysmic events that could happen in a matter of days, never mind years or weeks, just a matter of days, 40 days, 40 nights. A great part of the Earth's surface rocks are igneous in origin in many different forms and are often a tremendous extent on the surface, sometimes intruded between sedimentary rocks. So we have forced entry, sedimentary rocks, forced entry of molten igneous rocks, magma, into a rock formation. So we have sedimentary, so layers, sometimes forming the base of sedimentary series. These igneous rocks are found all over the world in great profusion. Often they are found intruding into previously deposited sedimentary rocks or on the surface covering vast areas of earlier deposits. This is not uniformitarianism. This is sudden cataclysmic event, one after the other, in short shrift. The Columbia Plateau of the northwestern United States is a tremendous lava plateau of almost incredible thickness, covering over about 200,000 square miles. The physiographic history of this province begins with the ancient surface below the lavas were erupted. This is known to have been locally rough, even mountainous, partly by the fact that some of the old peaks rose above the lava flood, which was at least several thousand feet deep. I wouldn't want to be on the earth at this time. Can you imagine that if you just survived? Noah and his 8 were in the ark, floating around in safety. Wouldn't want to be around the rest of the world. Can you imagine that? You see all this stuff. It would be horrendous to have movie cameras all over, video cameras all over the world watching this stuff happen. The amount of violence of it, unbelievable. Phenomenon, physiography of the western United States. The great shields of the world, notably in this continent, the Great Canadian Shield, are mainly granites and other igneous rocks. 2 million square miles of the Great Canadian Shield region are covered by so-called Precambrian rocks, composed in part of pink granite gneiss that was originally intruded in the form of batholiths during so-called vast mountain-making upheavals. Batholiths, defined as